Hey everybody, it's Andy. I wanted to give you a thought of the day, PACT Act edition. And this one's a little longer than some of the other ones that I've done because it's going to be a PACT Act FAQ where I'm going to talk about some of the questions I've gotten over the past month or so about the PACT Act. You've probably heard me talk about the PACT Act over the last couple months, about how it made its way through Congress with some fits and starts. And I've been getting a lot of questions about, hey, what does this PACT Act do for me? And what do I do here in this situation? How does it work? And I can't by any means answer every question that the PACT Act puts out there, but it's a pretty big deal. It changes a lot of stuff for veterans, and I think it's a pretty good expansion of veterans' benefits, recognizing some of the science out there and how injured a lot of our veterans of the Gulf War and the GWAT era have been. So with that in mind, I just want to dive right into it. So, and I'm going to read off my notepad here because I've got a lot of questions that have come in via email from clients, from other folks. So anyway, so the first question I get is, how do I file a PACT Act claim, right? And I kind of have to push back at that question because a PACT Act claim, we have to look at what the PACT Act does and then the three pillars of a VA disability. So you could probably file for a residuals of toxic exposure claim, but I'm not sure that's going to get you very far. So what the PACT Act does, though, is it takes care of one of the prongs of VA disability. So the three prongs of VA disability are you had an in-service event, which in this case would be toxic exposure. You have a current disability, means something is wrong with you now, you are sick now, and there's a nexus between the two, right? So a connection between what's going on now and what happened in service. And what the PACT Act does is it says, when it comes to nexus, these things are presumed, if there's something wrong with you, to be connected to your toxic burn pit exposure, right? So you don't have to prove nexus because it's presumed that if you were at a burn pit and you now have one of these 23 conditions, it is service connected. Now, the next question I get is, obviously, I don't need my notepad for this one. What are those 23 conditions? And I have to read off the list because it's 23 conditions, and they are as follows. Brain cancer, glioblastoma, respiratory cancer of any type, gastrointestinal cancer of any type, so think stomach cancer or colon cancer, head cancer of any type, lymphoma of any type, lymphatic cancer of any type, neck cancer, pancreatic cancer, reproductive cancer, kidney cancer, melanoma, asthma, chronic rhinitis, toxic sinusitis, constrictive bronchiolitis or obliterative bronchiolitis, emphysema, granulomatous disease, interstitial lung disease, pleuritis, pulmonary fibrosis, sarcoidosis, chronic bronchitis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Those are your 23 conditions. And obviously some of them contain, varieties on these conditions. So they're not, neck cancer of any type could have a bunch of different cancers. But in any event, if you have one of those conditions and you were exposed to burn pits, the VA will presumptively cover you for that condition. So the next question, other than presumptives, what does the PACT Act do for me? Well, a couple things. One is that if you're burn pit exposed, or if you've been exposed to a burn pit rather, you can get medical care from the VA, and this will include an initial toxic exposure screening and then repeat toxic exposure screenings over your lifetime so that they can catch diseases as they come up. So that's an important feature. It actually also, and again I have to go through my notes here, it is, in addition to that, it actually will open 31 or provide funding to open 31 medical centers across the country, VA medical centers, so help perhaps reduce that backlog a touch. So there are a couple things in there. It will also, this is actually big, I just said there are presumptive conditions. Well, the VA can add presumptive conditions without going to Congress. This PACT Act will actually improve that process a little bit, so conditions can get added to the list over time without having to go back to Congress each time. Now, big one that I get, is sleep apnea covered? No. Sleep apnea is not presumptive under the PACT Act or really anywhere else. Now, that said, and by the way, I watched a video that the VA put out that really got under my skin because they were saying, well, the the only way you can get sleep apnea is if weight gain causes your throat to collapse, and that's what causes sleep apnea. It's genetic, and yada yada. And that's not really true, because there are a lot of conditions that can lead to sleep apnea, whether by the medication itself or by worsening pre-existing sleep apnea. There's evidence that asthma and bronchitis can worsen sleep apnea. So you may not get a direct or presumptive connection, but you may get be able to get connection by establishing that your service-connected burn pit exposure illness made your sleep apnea worse, right? So again, it's not presumptive. There's some more hoops you got to jump through, but it's there. So with that said, it's not on the list yet. Maybe someday, but not right now. I've covered what conditions it covers. Okay. It also covers, by the way, Vietnam veterans. It adds hypertension to Vietnam veterans for Agent Orange exposure. It also increases or adds some new places where they will presumptively assume that a Vietnam veteran was actually exposed to Agent Orange, right? So not just as a presumptive conditions, but if you in certain places, they presume that you were exposed to Agent Orange. And just like they did with the Blue Water Navy statutes a couple years ago, if you were in certain places during certain time periods, it's presumed you were exposed to Agent Orange. So you get that in-service event or condition is now presumptive. And now if you have one of those other conditions, you now have your nexus taken care of, right? So it does some stuff there. It also does, the PACT Act also includes the Camp Lejeune Justice Act, and that stuff, which I'm going to cover in another video. I discussed it with Rob Jenner a couple weeks ago, so check out that video. By the way, keep the questions coming, guys. Ask the questions in the comments. Keep making these videos as the questions come up. Also, I'd be remiss, I wouldn't be a good YouTuber if I didn't say, hit that like button and subscribe to these videos if you want more of this content, more questions asked from the perspective of a VA disability benefits lawyer. I like putting out this information because that way veterans can be more informed about what's going on and how the very confusing system of the VA works. With that said, take care, have a good weekend, and look forward to posting the next video.